Thank you for attending the Newman Crows Landing Unified School District School Board meeting for November 14th, 2002. I have some action to report out of closed session. In closed session, the board. I just did it. You didn't do it? Sorry. We stood up. I apologize. Okay. In closed session, the board voted 4-0 with one absent to approve an unpaid leave of absence to district employee number 14087 for up to 6 months in length pursuant to Education Code 45195. Okay, thank you. Public communication, agenda and non-agenda items. Any person wishing to comment on agenda and non-agenda items may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name. It would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. California law prohibits the school board from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the board. Per board policy BB 9323, individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board may limit the total of time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Do we have anyone that would like to speak to the board? Julie, would you like to go up to? No. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, approval of agenda. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as published with the removal of item 4 in the action items.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly? He's absent. Mr. Bazar?
Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It's passed 4-0 with one absent. Information discussion items. Our student rep, Julie.
Hello, everyone. At Oris Stimba, Lily Cherry has raised concerns over a Halloween break and nutrition break. She requests to have the day after Halloween off, and 309 of the students at her school have signed a petition complaining about attending school the following day. Lily also suggests that we end our current nutrition break. 324 students have voiced their opinions by signing Lily's petition, and these petitions are right here. They concur that a nutrition break is an inconvenience since several students have had breakfast previous to this, and it takes 5 minutes out of our lunch break. Aside from this, our school volleyball and football teams have performed successfully in the rivalry games, and last Friday, our football team won their first playoff game of the season. So congrats.
There we go. Do you have anything else to report? Or is...
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wouldn't absolutely clear what you said there at the beginning. Maybe because I was writing something down, but the petitions are in favor of eliminating the nutrition break. Is that what you're saying? Okay, I just didn't know whether it was in favor of establishing a nutrition break or getting rid of one. It's been a while since I attended high school, and I didn't know whether they had one now.
And Ms. Vash, what we'll ask the ASB to do is work with site leadership, both administrative and the leadership teams, to come up with a plan on what that would look like. And then we can certainly work on that. I mean, it's whatever the OHS community wants in that regard, as long as all parties are working. The November 1st issue, the day after Halloween, typically that is an in-service day unless the day falls on like a Tuesday or a Friday, because you won't really get people showing up. If there's a 1 day of school, then a day off, they'll just make that a 4-day weekend. So I think next year it's a Wednesday, and it's typically a day when we build our calendar, we highlight that day after Halloween to be a professional development day. So that is in the plan. So good job. We're going to get that done for you next year. Or strike like that.
Yeah, and you won't be able to participate. Data talks, Mr. Vargas, would you like to speak on facilities inspection tool?
Test 1, 2. I would be honored. Thank you, Ms. Conforti. Superintendent Posey, members of our school board, and members of our public and school district, I want to welcome you this evening as I give our annual facilities report. Our schools would not be schools without great facilities, and we're blessed to have the facilities we have in the Newman-Cruz Landing School District. And so tonight I'm going to be talking a little bit about projects that we have going on this year, projects that we just recently completed. And also I'll be sharing the FIT reports. In fact, I'm going to be starting with the FIT reports. And many of you have heard the term FIT, but ask yourself, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to have a FIT school? So the FIT report is an annual inspection that's required. It was established by OPSC, which is the Office of Public School Construction. And its intent is to determine if a school facility is in good repair, meaning everything should be functioning and working throughout your entire school day. The FIT is really just the measurement tool, and it's also used by Williams inspections, which must occur within those first 30 days. The FIT model works by simply inspecting 15 facility categories. It includes all student restrooms, all of our kitchens and cafeterias at each of your schools. It also includes all TK and kinder classrooms, along with an additional 25% of the rest of the school classrooms. By inspecting these areas using those 15 categories, it will the formula will determine the overall FIT rating for that year for the school. So you'll notice it's hard to do, but you'll see the 99 to 100% is exemplary, and it can happen, and it has happened in this district. Both Von Renner and Herd Barrington Elementary in 2020 and 2021 received a 100% score. But the goal here is to obviously maintain our facilities and be consistent. So the goal being the 90 to 98.99. And I can share with you the one thing that this district, at least over the last 5 years, and I'm going to have a chart that will really highlight this. Our district has been very consistent, and that's a key word that I'll come right back to. Of course, the 75 to 89.99 is fair. Our students and our staff deserve to be above fair. And so we continually stay in that good category. So we'll talk more about that. The 0 to 74.99%, I won't be discussing that tonight. And my goal as your maintenance director is to never have to report any poor conditions related to any of our schools. As I get to the first set of findings, I do want to point something out that I think is important for all of you to note. Since 2012, we have been inspected by Stanislaus County. At least 3 to 4 of our schools are inspected every year. And once again, as I stated, this inspection occurs within the first 30 days of school. So this year, school came back on August 8th, and I started to get a little nervous around August 20th because I hadn't heard from our inspector. And so I thought, did he forget about us? What's going on? I know we have to have our inspections. And so I went ahead, reached out to John Cincinnati at Stanislaus County Office of Education. And I said, John, what's going on? Do we have any dates for our inspections this year? And he says, Matt, you haven't heard? Newman is not going to be inspected this year by the county. You guys are getting an exemption this year. And it's the first time I've heard of that locally for this school district. Now, it doesn't mean that we weren't still required to complete our FIT inspection. But what it actually meant is that the county wouldn't be here to do the inspection. I just continued the inspection using the FIT template and the FIT tool. So it was a really, I think it's a compliment to that word consistency. I asked John, I says, John, what's different this year? Are you short inspectors? What's going on? He says, Matt, Newman is one of the few schools this year that is off the list because of that consistency, because when they come, they're not finding major deficiencies. That's so vital. It's not every day that every light, that every air conditioner or heater is working. But the county knows that when we do have a maintenance issue at one of our schools, it gets addressed immediately. So they're really trusting that we continue that diligence, and that's what we continue to do. So I'm going to start with Bonita. You'll see Bonita's overall score this year was a 98.44%, which is a very high in the 90 percentile category. To get that score basically was just a couple of items on the report that were noted. You'll see classroom 4 had a stained ceiling tile, and the kitchen door and window needed some deeper cleaning. And I try to be as fair as I can when I'm doing these inspections. I don't highlight every single item, but what I try to do is identify patterns. So if I see something in one classroom, it's probably not going to be noted. That's a conversation with our custodial team, who does a great job. But if I begin to notice a room and then another room and another area that have similar concerns, it's important to note those items. It's all about the accountability of making sure we're getting better every year. The Hunt School site actually did very well again this year, 97.13. The findings were also minor, a dirty sink in classroom 3, a couple of damaged ceiling tiles. Room 18 had some spider webs, and normally in an October inspection, I would let that go and call it decorations, but I couldn't do that since the inspection occurred on the 29th of August. We had one drinking faucet that was not functioning, meaning one was not, so I noted the one was not. And I put as a recommendation the wood playground border. It's been there since the late 90s. It's wood that it's just time to replace. So thanks to the support of Mr. Posey, we did purchase some new polyurethane playground border. It'll match the borders that we have at the other schools. And the plan is during our 3-week Christmas break this year, which I know you guys will be celebrating that. I'm excited for you to be off. And so while you guys are off, our teams will be putting that border in place of the wooden border. Heard Barrington, once again, 98.28, riding just under that 100%. And what I'll share about Heard Barrington is sometimes as an inspector, you actually have to work to find things. Sometimes they're not very obvious. An example is in the boys' restroom. The restroom itself was cleaned and very well maintained, but there was obviously a day that some boys had a food fight, and some of the food ended up on the ceiling of the bathroom. So that was noted along with some paper towel. The girls' restroom did have 2 lights that were out. That was on the 4th and 5th grade wing restroom, and that is under the electrical category, so that had to be noted. Or Stimba High School, a larger school to inspect, but it still follows under the same formula. So there's just more areas, obviously. When I got there about 6:15 on the morning of the inspection, one of the first areas I like to inspect is the kitchen. I like to see what our kitchen staff walk into in the morning. They should come into a clean kitchen that is functioning and ready to prepare food, meals for the day. And so overall, the kitchen looked amazing. But when I got to the restrooms, I noticed that it woke me up. Actually, the door, the boys' restroom door, as soon as I walked in, the door hit me from behind and kind of woke me up. And it was simply a door that needed adjustment. Obviously, it hit me. It could hit a student. So we took care of that later that day. And that's one thing I'll highlight. When I walk, I always walk with the lead custodian of that school site. There's no one better to go through this process than the lead custodian of the school. They know the inner workings of the school. They're usually the one that communicates if there are issues. And I really like them to see what we're looking for under the Williams inspections. It makes them better, which makes our facilities much better. So it's just an education piece. Some deeper cleaning on the cafeteria air conditioning vents was needed. And so P13, had some dirty window seals, some carpet needed a little more detail and vacuuming. The K-Wing girls restroom had 3 flush valves that were leaking. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily a leak on the floor or a slip hazard, but Williams requires that there should be no fixtures leaking. So that has since been addressed. The boys' locker room did have something that was noted on the fire side of the inspection, which was it was completely missing its fire extinguisher. So that's one of those items we addressed during the walk, although still noted. Von Renner, once again, 98.06, a very good score. You see a pattern here, some dusty window seals. That's a conversation with our custodial team just to remind them it's an area that's not cleaned every day, but we want to make sure they are periodically going to window seals and cleaning. And then some you'll see here, chemicals within the reach of children. One thing I noticed over the last 3 years and related to COVID, what changed was we have a lot more cleaning products in our classrooms, disinfectants, wipes, and so forth. But that doesn't change the regulation of making sure they are stowed or stored out of the reach of children. So we had one classroom that did have that as a concern. Over at Alt Ed, 95, still a very high score, just some dirty window seals, carpet stains, fire extinguisher that needed inspection. So it was there, but we asked that our custodians do a visual inspection every month to make sure the fire extinguisher is ready for use. And then a drinking faucet that needed some deeper cleaning. Yola Middle School, 96.03. They had a few items related to fire. Obviously, the items within the 2 feet of the ceiling are always a concern. But I'm finding we find these concerns usually when it's a new staff member. So once again, just that educational piece to let them know, hey, we need to keep those things away from the ceiling. Kitchen had a few dirty sink aerators, and that's directly related to the maintenance we do every day. You know, we're gifted to have the city of Newman and they provide us water, but our water, as you know, is well water. So it's high in minerals. So that does affect our plumbing. There was a light out in the girls' restroom and just a few leaking flush valves. And then the boys' locker room had a hand dryer that was not functioning. And so that has since been addressed. And then the boys and girls restroom regarding the amphitheater, this was very interesting. We had not used the amphitheater restroom for summer school. So that restroom kind of got, kind of put on the back burner, and it just wasn't stocked, that first few weeks of school. And so we've since remedied that, and I had a great conversation with the lead custodian, just reminding him of the importance of keeping our restrooms stocked and ready for the school day. This 5-year growth comparison is really what I want you to take away as a really compliment to not only our maintenance department, but all of our school sites who recognize that our facilities are vital to the success of our learning environments. I'll start off with the no change. Benita, talk about consistent. They actually came up with the same score they had last year. So no gains, no losses, but just maintaining that 95 is a very good score. You'll also note the 3 in the red category, the 1.68 for Von Renner, Heard Barrington 172. They're just under that, right around the 2% mark. And even though you see those as a dip in their score, what I really want to focus on is if you look at the 5 years and how consistent they've actually been to the hundreds. So if you take a look at Heard Barrington and Von Renner, where can you go from 100? It's tough, right? You're either going to go down a couple percentage or you may maintain, but it's very difficult to do. So what I want to leave you with is the overall percentage of increase, the 6.19. The value of that is that if you look back, we've been doing this since 2012, but I have a 5-year report here from 2018. If you look at the consistency between 18 to say 20, and you see that 96, and then you see it go up to, was it 97? And this year, once again, a 97. I think it shows exactly what John from the county was speaking about. We're a school that continues to maintain our facilities from year to year. Of course, any given day, these percentages can change, but I love the consistency that we're seeing here. And we celebrate that here in Newman. Back in 2015, with the support of our superintendent, Mr. Philpott, we created an award, not for the highest score in the fit, which that in itself is a great thing to receive. But what we care about is consistent improvement. And that just shows that we're trying to improve aging facilities, which is very difficult to do. So in 2015, alternative education, and Mr. Rick Gonzalez was the first school to win that award. And this year, it's right up there for everyone to see, with an increase of 6.58%. I am honored to award this year's FIT Award to Hunt Elementary. So I'm going to ask Principal Donna Williams to come on up and join me as I present this plaque, which is a staple that gets placed in each office of the winner that year. So you can see some of the former winners, and Hunt is actually one of our repeat winners. And we're going to talk about why I think that is the case. So I want to present this to Donna Williams. Donna, congratulations to you and your team. And yes, I know Joel's there, and I know Donna has a few words to say on behalf of her custodians as well, and I have something to share.
Well, first off, this is all about Joel and Anthony. Thank you so much. One big hand to Joel and Anthony for their hard work. This is they're there every day, and they work hard around the clock, and our students actually have little packages for you, little items here for you that they made. So can I have them come on up?
Yeah, why don't you guys come on up?
If you can come on up. So the entire Hunt Elementary community just appreciates you, all of us. So thank you so much. And this package here, you'll have enough reading for the next month. Joel, this is for you. And I have another package of reading material for Anthony to last for some time. Thank you so much.
We have a few more. We have a few more. So I just mentioned a moment ago that I think these guys have it figured out. You see, when the school that wins the FIT award comes up for their presentation, it has been tradition since 2015 that the maintenance director buys them lunch. And so they're each getting lunch on behalf of Mr. Vargas. So Anthony, lunch on you. Joel, lunch on you. And I have, this is for you, and I have one for each of you guys. Put this up in your office. So once again, congratulations to Hunt. It's a fun thing that we can do to celebrate our facilities, and the facilities do not maintain themselves. It takes qualified, educated people who have pride every day. They come to work every day, and they care about making these facilities as clean, as safe for our students as possible. So just once again, a great congratulations to Hunt Elementary and their team. Okay. Great work. Thank you, guys. Okay, guys, thank you for coming, guys, and enjoy your lunch. So just a great team. And I know we're highlighting Hunt tonight, obviously based on a score. But what I'll say is, you know, we have 6 other school sites that just looking at the numbers, they also deserve a great recognition. So thank you for all the admin team at all of your schools. You guys are blessed to have a great team working behind you. I just wanted to acknowledge Donna Williams, also our learning director, Wadeen Van Ruler. I know she couldn't be here this evening, but I wanted to acknowledge her as well. And then just some project updates. I know you guys are excited as I am about the OHS tennis court and aquatic center. If you drove by there today, it's interesting. This picture is about a week behind. I can't quite update as quickly as they're building, but they are actually shearing all the walls with plywood for the wall strength, obviously. And then you'll see the green pipe around the edges of the swimming pool will actually be to help drain rainwater away from the pool. We don't really want the water draining into the pool. We want to keep the pool clean. So there will be drainage all of the concrete and flat work around the pool. And then fence posts, this has been very active. You'll drive by and you're probably going to see a lot of posts getting set. This is vital to secure both our tennis courts and our swimming pool. Yes, we're going to have access points, but we need to have high fences, and we want to make sure the tennis balls stay in the court, not end up across the street. An update on the Von Renner Administrative Building and Multipurpose Room. A few weeks back, our plans went to DSA. They're right at the halfway point of reviewing those plans. We were told we should have their comments back by the end of November. I will tell you, there has been some delays at DSA. There are a lot of construction projects going on throughout the state, but they have been very good this year about communicating with us, which is important. So we still expect that end of November report and notes from them, and then we'll adjust our plans accordingly. This is a project I really want to rave about, because this is about our district finding ways to bring technology in our classrooms for our educators to teach and for our students to learn. And where the cost savings is here, you guys have heard the term some assembly required. So we did a great investment in some touch screen TVs, interactive panels, and they needed to be mounted on carts. Well, the carts came in a cardboard box, unassembled, a lot of screws. And with the support of Chris Mendonca and Edward Ross, our lead technology, we were able to assemble these. In fact, I think we started the year getting 88 in our classrooms. We started at the younger classrooms, the elementary level. And then we just recently distributed 164 more. So this is direct technology in the hands of our teachers and our paraprofessionals who are educating our students. So it's very valuable to have the shop. I want to share this. Our warehouse, I get other maintenance directors that say, we'd love to have your shop. It's a vital place. It's dry. The guys can work even when it's cold outside and raining. They can do this type of work when maybe they can't go up on a roof or work on an air conditioner. These are the kind of things that this team gets done to just save our district money. Our OHS Ag Department greenhouse, as you know, the greenhouse is built, but the electrical, the utilities, the gas plumbing, that installation is actually scheduled to start at the end of this month. We've had a few other projects that had to wrap up. That's the next one coming on board. And then our cafetorium, really excited to share that I know Mr. Posey and I just spoke about a purchase that we've made for the lighting and the sound equipment. We'll work closely with an electrician along with our electricians and get this thing up in the air, get the lights and the sound going, because this is an opportunity. As you guys know, we have a great theatrical department, and they deserve to have the most up-to-date technology with what they're working with. So sound and lighting will be improved in the YOLO cafeteria. A project that I know you guys will all get a chance to enjoy. And then just some ongoing maintenance to zip through here. Asphalt maintenance is important, whether it's the city of Newman or it's our school district. We need to maintain it. So this summer, Bonita, Hunt, and YOLO campuses had the asphalt sealed and restriped. You're familiar with Orstimba. If you've driven into the parking lot, we have a new entrance and exit off of Hardin. But you'll notice that the approach and the exit is not complete. We are right now still working with PG&E. They have to adjust their electrical vaults so that we can get the correct elevation to complete the sidewalk and the roadway. Bonita, a great project this summer that, just an example, for the next 10 years, we should have no issues regarding roof leaks at Bonita. So the main IMC roof as well as the custodial shop had a new roof put on it this summer. And while we were doing that, we didn't just do the roof, we did all the air conditioning. So the entire campus has brand new air conditioning, heating, as does Portable 10. So I think that was a very successful project just to keep us moving forward with keeping our students warm on these cold mornings. Simba Gym, we did fully replace one of the 6 units. One of them we did some repairs on, we were able to get parts, but the other 4 units will eventually need parts or replacement. And one of the things I just wanted to share with you, many of you may be experiencing this in your personal life, but with regard to air conditioning parts, the last couple of years, and 3 years prior, we had no issues getting any parts. They were on every shelf you can imagine. The strategy has been a challenging one for us because you can't repair something if you don't have the parts to do it. So I know I fully respect Mr. Posey, and one of his goals of mine is we're trying to really keep a clean SSC, a clean yard. But you'll notice if you drive by there, I keep quite a few old air conditioners, and there's a reason for that. I like to have a plan B. So if I need to pull a part off of something that matches something at another school, it's the worst case scenario, but it's better than not having it. So he's going to talk to me tomorrow about that, I'm sure. But I do appreciate his support. One of the things Mr. Posey has brought to this district, which I value as a maintenance director, is if you know we're going to need it, get it now. Be prepared, have it ready to go. Don't be coming to me saying you need something. If you think we're going to need it, let's get it. Because we shouldn't have to have delays. We don't want any staff or students to be impaired by a unit that's gone down because we don't have parts. YOLO Cafeteria, speaking of that, has 1.5 air conditioners technically. One it's on its last leg. The other one's completely gone. Luckily, we still have heating on those units. But on the first week of Thanksgiving, the break that Tuesday, we have a contract that's going to be replacing both of those units. It's a great time to do it while students are home for Thanksgiving. And so that's a big project coming forward. And then I know it was kind of dark when we arrived here this evening, but if you guys get a chance, I really want you to take a look at the work that's taking place, even here at Von Renner, with the 5 Modesto ash trees in the kinder play yard. Our district has always contracted in-house. We do our own tree pruning. I know I've been here since 1996, and I heard a story when I first came into the district, and I'll share with you very briefly. One of our former maintenance directors, Carlos Lorenco, got a request from a company to prune the trees along Hunt. And the contractor, great contractor out of Modesto, kind of known for their high prices though, gave him what he thought was a good deal. It was $500. So there were 5 trees that needed to be pruned, and about a week and a half later, they were complete and sent the bill to the district office. And I heard that Carlos got the call and said, "Carlos, what's this bill for $2,500? Well, what they did, they charged $500 per tree instead of $500 for the whole job. So for me, coming in 2012 as a maintenance director and being a former lead groundsman, our district is successful in finding ways to get the job done using qualified staff. Sometimes we need to rent equipment, but I believe we do it better than anyone else. We do it with pride. And a shout out to Danny Alves and our entire grounds team. This is over at Hunt Elementary. I joke and call this our giraffe tree in the district because it looks like a giraffe went around the tree and pruned it. And that's just an example of how good Danny is on the lift. And I got a couple more here. It's just some projects on the drawing board. Barrington HVAC, the school being built in 2010. So we're going to continue to monitor those units because Aon as a manufacturer went out of business. So imagine it's hard enough to get parts for companies that are still manufacturing. That company is no longer in business. So we will be needing to look at options for that. YOLO, built in 2002. Many of you in this room may have attended YOLO Middle School. And that school, the units there, a lot of them are still 20 years old. They're going on 20 years old this year. So as parts and equipment become available, we'll continue to update those as well. And speaking of upgrading, we're blessed to have our data technician, Edward Ross. We've worked closely with Edward on upgrading our security cameras at all of our school sites, but specifically YOLO and OHS. We're trying to replace some of the older cameras and add cameras in areas where we need a little more of a focal point. And then just some modernization money research. I know Carolyn and Mr. Posey has worked really hard on looking at our eligibility for matching funds for projects. So Von Renner has about $4.8 million available for a project. And one of our focuses, and we'll be talking to you more about this, is I think we've all walked Von Renner and those portables 15 through 24. We're at a point where it's really time to see those go. Hunt has the eligibility.
Mr. Vargas, let me just
Yes.
jump in on that a second. So what we found out in some research on modernization is we've had to leave those portables there because they count as square footage of classrooms, which qualifies you for modernization. But what we've also found out in the research is if we have a plan, we can phase it in. So we have to replace classroom per classroom. If we tear 8, we have to replace with 8. Right? But we can build into the plan. Phase 1 is to demo. Phase 2 is to build. And the timeline can be when the money allows. So once we apply for the modernization, the funds get locked in, which will then allow us to remove the classrooms we're not using, the eyesores, the place where critters are dwelling in some instances. And it won't affect our qualification dollars because we already have a approved DSA and approved CDE plan in place. So Huff Contracts is working, our contractors, architects, are working on that phase-in plan so we can send it to DSA, send it to CDE, get that approved. So yes, you will be funded. We don't know when. Then we could go ahead and demo and not worry about losing the eligibility for those classrooms. So we will, would say within the next 18 months, be demoing those unused classrooms, which is a good news. And then the OHS tennis courts actually qualify for the 1.6 million in eligibility because they are classrooms for our PE classrooms. It's just a way of taking some strict regulated money and make it less strict. We'll still use it for facilities, but remember that modernization says for every classroom removed, you have to replace with a classroom. If you get it more into the general side of construction money, you could do new building with it. You don't have to remove. So if we did have 1.6 million for modernization, we spent it on, say, a new classroom. They said, oh, you put 3 classrooms in, which 3 classrooms are you demolishing? You can't gain classrooms. By using the tennis courts as kind of a way to move it from modernization to new construction, we could actually build 3 new classrooms with that money. So that's the purpose of doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. And Hunt, to add to the conversation, $4.5 million could be used as part of the master plan, and we'll be bringing that to you in February to discuss some options with that funding. And other than that, that's my report, unless you have any questions related to the FIT. Or
The OHS HVAC, those are new, right? They're like
Yeah,
less than 10 years old.
it's very interesting. So you have a very good memory. In 2010, we did an energy management upgrade across the district. We upgraded from F40s to T8 light fixtures, not LED, but the better technology at the time. The company that did the work, it was in cooperation with Sylvania. They paid for the air conditioning for the Orsimba High School, all 6 units. But what I've learned over the last few years is they weren't a brand name. So it's like saying, hey, we're going to give you air conditioning, but they did not give us Train or Carrier. They gave us a brand name that doesn't exist today. And so what I'll tell you is, we're talking 12 years. A unit should have lasted between 15 and 18. We're finding they're failing. They've been failing. So we're trying to get them to last a little bit longer, but we're not hesitating to get proposals on replacement. And like I said, we've done one and repaired one. What I don't want is to get into a circumstance where we lose 2 or 3, and then we lose the comfort zone inside the gym. So, but great memory, Mr.
Perfect,
Wallace.
that makes sense.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that our facilities are amazing. You walk around, they look like parks. Besides keeping them incredibly gorgeous, our team also is responsible for painting the O on the 50-yard line of a playoff game. And when Mr. Alves did that, which looked beautiful, he wasn't worried about the 6 hours it took him to do it. It was who's going to do the stuff to keep the campuses looking beautiful. I mean, the heart is really built around, we want to keep these places amazing, and they really are. So congratulations to your team.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have a discussion, a data talk on rigor, iReady diagnostic. Yeah. Mrs. Betancourt? No? Mrs.
Yeah, they're going to
Oh, okay. Mrs. Robles and Mrs. Vargas.
Good evening. I'm going to start with the SBAC data, then Mrs. Robles and Mrs. Vargas will be presenting the fall or the August actually iReady data. So I want to give you just a little bit of background on the 2020 SBAC. The last SBAC that we can actually compare results to was 2019. So we had 2 years due to the pandemic where we were not giving the SBAC to all. The first year we didn't give it to anybody. And then in 2021, we gave it just to 11th graders. So our results that we're going to be looking at tonight are compared to older results, if that makes sense. So I wanted to just look at some data that, some statements that we can make about the data. So statewide, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding the state standards in ELA, it declined by 4 percentage points in ELA and 6.5 in math. Our results mirrored those declines, and we declined in ELA by 5.3 percentage points as a district and 6.9 in math. And the comparison was from 2019 for across the state, the district. Those are the 2 years that are being compared. Interestingly enough, some of our subgroups maintained or did not drop as much as some of our students who were not in those subgroups. So for example, our economically disadvantaged students lost about 1.9 percentage points and in ELA and 6.9 in math, but our economically disadvantaged students that do not fall into that category dropped by 7.1 percentage points in ELA, which I found to be interesting. We could have discussions about why that happened, but it also happened at the state level. So it's an interesting data point that I think that we're going to probably be hearing more about. And 6.8 in math. Same thing for English learners. They kind of maintained from where they were. There was one error in the calculations from the presentation that you probably have in your board backup. So I changed it there and it's in red. And if you want a clean copy, I can resend that to you. But they lost about 2 percentage points, which also mirrors the state results. And then our English fluent students kind of mirrored again the state results with 5.3 percentage loss and a much larger loss in math, 8.7. Students with disabilities actually had a slight gain, and also in the state, they had a slight gain. I looked at a few other districts, some of the bigger districts that had a lot of students that I could kind of look at their data points. San Diego pretty much had the same results we did. So it's just interesting. They're interesting numbers. ELA basically and math basically remain the same. So for our students with disabilities. So those are just some overall data, some statements that we can make about, on these results. I want to mention that our teachers have seen this data since August, so they had it available to them. They're tentative results. The public, what you're seeing tonight, all the comparisons and the public results, we just got, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So that is why we've had tentative data, but we couldn't present it to the public until we got the go ahead from the state. So we looked at a 4-year comparison. So you're looking at the blue is ELA and the orange is math. So starting from 2017, you'll notice I just calling out again from 2019 to 2022, there's a gap there. But before the pandemic, we were on like basically a flat line. We were not really increasing or decreasing. We were staying about the same in both ELA and math. So you see that drop that happened post-pandemic over the 4 years. Edward, can you move it to the next slide? It's not. It was working. This is a comparison. We're looking at the state results in 3 areas: ELA, math, and science. This was the very first year for science results. So we consider these baseline results. The students take the test in 5th grade, 8th grade, and once in high school. And it's for high school, they want the students to take the test after they've completed most of their science instruction. This last year in the spring of 2022, we gave it to 11th and 12th graders because we had not been able to give the test during the pandemic. So the results we have this year are from 11th and 12th graders. So you'll see our, and looking at the state results, we looked at it 2 ways. We looked at the state as a whole, and then we looked at the state and economically disadvantaged students, because our demographics, we have about 75% of our students are economically disadvantaged. We wanted to compare that with what the state results were for economically disadvantaged students. So you can see we kind of held our own with the state and the county in ELA. And Patterson, and we outscored Gustine in the ELA area. In math, we again held our own with the state and the county. We were a little bit lower, but we outscored, believe Patterson, and were equitable with Gustine. And outscored Gustine in science. We were equitable with Gustine and Patterson. So science, I was really encouraged when you look at the results. There were a lot of kids who were nearly meeting standards. So there's a lot of potential for growth in that area. And it was the first assessment. And you'll see some more results on science. Edward, next. So this is ELA by grade level, students who met or exceeded standards. The district average was, I believe, around 34%, 35.24. So if you're looking at the grade levels that exceeded the district average, that would be 5th and 11th. Our 11th grade also includes students from West Side and independent study. So any high school students that were on independent study, we had about, I want to say 50 of them last year who were in 11th or 11th grade took this assessment. So those results are all wrapped up into the 11th grade, and 5th grade also outscored the district average. I want to point out our 3rd and 4th graders were our 2nd and 3rd graders who missed a whole year of instruction during the pandemic. So we're hoping to see better results with all of the interventions and things that have been put in place at the elementary sites. Next slide, Edward. The same thing for math. Again, the district average in math was 17.85. So you're seeing some bright spots, or students at grade levels that outscored our district average or exceeded our district average would be 3rd and 5th. So again, taking into account, 3rd and 6th, taking into account that our 3rd graders and our 4th graders, again, were our groups that we were really concerned about coming back off of the pandemic. Next slide, Edward. So science, we're looking at the county. Our 5th graders actually did fairly well. They with overall county average, and then our 8th and our high school, a little bit lower than the county average, and 8th grade even lower than the district average. So there's some work to do in those 2 areas. In science, in all areas in science. Again, though, even the 8th and the high school had a lot of students in the nearly meeting. So we're going to have to look at how we make adjustments so that we can move more students into those upper bands. Next slide, Edward. The SBAC data, this is by site now. So you're seeing it a lot of different ways. The district SBAC data for ELA meeting or exceeding. Some bright spots, of course, we see Oristimba and Bonita doing really well in the ELA. We're looking at how we improve those results even further, and then also improve at some of our sites that scored about at the average. Next, Edward. The same in math, where we really, our district average was 17 and Bonita had a real bright spot there. And HBE outscored our district average also, Barrington. And next slide, I think that's it for the SBAC.
Jump in on what you're saying about nearly met standards. I attended a data consortium meeting at the SCOE with all the superintendents, and we're going to be joining a consortium of, I think it's 9 schools now that will share all iReady and SBAC data, so we can look for bright spots across the county and see what pockets of excellence we can go see, like figure out a causation to the correlation, if you will. But when I walked in, it was like everybody was like, "What did you guys do?" And I'm like, "I know the number's 15. I'm just killing me." And they're like, "No, look at your yellow. Look at your nearly met standards. You're 2 times out of any other school. You're right there." And, you know, I hadn't thought of that before, that, you know, it's not that when you say 15, it's such a low, 15%, such a low number, but there's a great group, like a huge group of kids almost there. And that's where our interventions and our, our individualized instruction that you're seeing in the classroom will pay its dividends. I'm very confident of that.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to talk about is our iReady plan thus far. In spring of last year, we reflected on what we had done. And based on that, as a team, decisions were made on what focuses were going to be had. As discussed at our last board meeting, we put some professional developments in place. And based on those professional developments, we met together and we identified what the needs were for our students, and each site went ahead and put plans in place. Where we're at now in this timeline is where that little character is our first quarter instruction. So we've already held our first diagnostic, which that's what we will present to you right now. But please note that the diagnostic assessment was done in August of 2022. So it's a little old data, but there's been things that have been put in place, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Based on the first diagnostic assessment that was given, that gave us our baseline. That gave us our beginning point of what we needed to do. So our admin team and our teachers reviewed the instructional practices and modifications were made. Each site, including teachers, have tweaked their instructions and identified areas of support for students. On November 28th through the 16th, we're going to be administering our second benchmark or diagnostic assessment. And the same practices will take place where we will evaluate the assessment, evaluate our data, and put additional steps in place. So we do look forward in providing you with that information in January.
Okay, and this is just a reminder here of the placement levels. So when we look at this, sometimes it can be a little discouraging when we see a lot of yellow and red, but we want to kind of highlight that we're trying to group the yellow and the 2 green categories into one where we're working with those students. When it says 1 grade level below is the yellow, actually that means that they didn't meet all the grade level standards in the current year. So we're not very troubled yet when it's yellow because we haven't taught the whole year yet. So that's assuming you're green if you met all your grade level standards for the year. You're yellow if you haven't met them yet. And then so we're really focusing in on the red, and we're trying to clump the yellow and the greens together when we're kind of analyzing our data. So when you see the next slides with data chats, just kind of think like that. We're categorizing them as, they need their supports. We still need to teach their grade level standards for the year. But they're not bleeding. We're not in crisis when we're in yellow. So we're looking at those three as something positive.
I should have thought this out better, so we didn't have to keep raising it and putting it down next time. Whoops. Okay, so what you have in front of you is the data for our district. Keep in mind that this data is from August 2022, and it is for first grade through, did I skip a slide? I did. Hold on, let me go. How do I go backwards? There we go. Is this it? Yep. This is where I want to be. Perfect. Okay. This is our data for our district, and this represents data from grade 1 all the way through grade 12. And as Heather mentioned, we want to see our students. We are glad that they are in yellow and above because they're just entering the grade level, and the standards that they're needing to meet are those for the end of the school year. So if you notice on for our 1st through 5th grade, I added those together, the yellow and the green, both greens, and we're at 53% in reading, and for math, we're at 49%. For middle school, we're at 36% for reading, and it's interesting because math also was at 36%, just we had more students in yellow and less students in the green. For our high school, we had 29% of our students that were at yellow and above, and in math, we had 16%. So Heather and I will discuss more in detail the grade level spans. But one thing that I wanted you to know is that this is just only one measure of multiple measures that the sites and the administration, as well as teachers, are having conversations on. They are looking at not only the iReady data, SBAC data, of course, but unit assessments. They're doing interim assessments, which are called IABs, FIABs. They're doing quick quizzes, checking for understanding, as well as student work. And I know that these conversations have been had with input in the time that you have allowed us to do with collaborations and PLCs.
Okay, so as we look at the elementary reading data in grades 1 through 5, we can draw some conclusions. So when we see this, it can almost, we sometimes can feel like, what does this mean? Or what are we going to do about it? And so some of the conclusions that we can draw are, first of all, 1st and 2nd grade looks impressive because there's not a lot of red or dark red. But also grades 1 and 2 won't have dark red because they haven't been in school 2+ years. And so I'm not saying that's a really great positive comment, but we have to look at our data objectively, and we need to, draw conclusions that are accurate. And so the dark red and the red, that means they would be in school 2+ years or 3 years behind. So we can kind of table those 2 grade levels for a minute. True analysis becomes clear in grades 3-5. That's when we can start making some assumptions. We can look at multiple measures. We also know that students' confidence with technology, accountability gets higher as the grade levels move up. So with a 1st grader taking a test online, they may not have the same result as if a teacher's asking them a question in person, like, what would be another word for lonely? And then a student in person talking to their teacher, it might be very different than if they're having to read. Did they struggle with reading? Did they struggle with meaning? Did they struggle with technology? So in the early grades, those things are things that we consider. Another thing with iReady reading is it includes many standards. It includes all of the standards in reading for the grade level. So it's not so much that these students are struggling with reading. iReady isn't testing words per minute or fluency in reading. We use other measures for that. So this isn't telling us which students can read and which students struggle with reading. This is telling us a big picture of all of the standards. So it might tell us students that are struggling with something like shades of meaning, author's purpose, main idea, poetic structure, blending syllables. So we really have to hone in on what standards they're missing. So this isn't so much these students can read and these students can't read. It's not as simple as just reading, but it's still a measure. And then we make decisions looking at the whole grade levels reading standards. And then as teachers use it, then we're more able to target specific standards when we see trends. So a teacher can click on their class, click on a student, click on the standard they missed. And this is a really good indication for SBAC because SBAC is also all the grade level standards. It's not just a reading assessment. Similarly with math encompasses 4 domains and several applications. So when we look at math, especially an August assessment, they wouldn't have been taught yet the grade level standards for those domains and applications. So are we talking about, is it numbers and operations? Is it algebra, geometry, measurement and data? So this is all of the above. So what this will be telling us is how the students are doing with all of the math. Even though maybe in August, September, they would have been focused heavily on numbers and operations, this will still give us the big picture look of all the math domains and all of the math applications. So the questions that we present ourselves with when we see data like this that we want to improve is really just like, in which domain do we prioritize support? So that's a conversation that that I have with the principals and that they have with their teachers. We all have with the teachers and the students, which is, if it's just do better, it's not gonna be very focused, right? Just, we want it to look better. So a big part of our job and our conversation is, what specifically are we looking at? Which domain, which application, what do we want to improve? And we have to really hone in with some clarity to get good results. Otherwise, we're just looking at all, 40 different types of math, and it's not super focused. Also in the classroom, how are we using iReady for Math? So do the students go on and there's not a lot of individualized instruction, or are teachers starting to select some individualized instruction? So that's going to have a different result depending on how we use it. So we're still in year 1 of individualized instruction. So we're leaning more and more towards those being really individualized. So that's a focus. And then the conversation I have at the sites is also, what is the instructional priority? So when we're looking at this, what is your instructional priority? What trends and patterns do you see at the site that need to be improved? And so we get very specific into the data. So just to kind of conclude, I guess, with the elementary piece here is, as we're preparing for Diagnostic 2 in a couple weeks, for that window to open, we're pretty excited to see the results. We're also setting goals. So I've asked the principals to kind of set some goals for their students to get them excited about it and to plan some student success recognitions afterwards. Sometimes you just need to give kids a little motivation and celebration so that they know what's coming, and also that there's a goal set, not just one day they don't know about it and it's on the computer, and here's your assessment. So we're trying to kind of set the stage in the next few weeks and provide the students with some incentives. So that is it. Before I hand it over to Ms. Robles, I would also just like to tell all of you seniors in here that that awesome juniors SBAC data, that was you guys. So you're all here.
The one thing that I want to mention, as Heather talked about, is that motivational and engagement piece. Now, it's harder in secondary to get them motivated and to really realize the importance of assessments. So with that said, I will just briefly review our iReady for YOLO and OHS or STEMBA with the same measurements. That we got to remember that we want it, the yellow is the first, it's 1 grade below and above, and that's where we want them to be. Okay. Also noting that there are multiple measures. There are multiple assessments that are used, and this is only one determiner of that. Okay.
So if we take a look at our reading, which was interesting for YOLO is YOLO's reading and math scores were very similar to each other. For sixth grade, for students who were scoring one grade level below, if we add that amount, it was 40%. And for seventh grade, it was 39%, and eighth grade was 31%. As Heather mentioned, the teachers as well as the administration has kind of focused in on what the need was. What is it that the focus needs to be? And what was determined for reading was that the focus needed to be really on the comprehension, literature, and informational text, which is something that the sites have been really working on and honing in on. The interesting thing is that vocabulary tended to be also an area of focus, but not a vocabulary in isolation, but vocabulary within content. Like how was it used within that content? Found out some students didn't quite know the content, how it was being used. And that goes back to our old way of teaching vocabulary. We do not want to teach it in isolation, but within the subject. For math, similarly, for sixth grade, from yellow and above, we had 40%. Seventh grade was 46%, and eighth grade was 23%. Now, the areas of focus for YOLO and math, which was interesting, was number and operations, algebraic and algebra and algebraic thinking. What was interesting was for our eighth graders, they really struggled with geometry. So that's been a conversation that's been had. I've had the privilege of sitting in on some PLCs and collaborations and meetings with our partners with SCOE, with Stacy Dawson, having those tough conversations as to what are the standards that are missing? What are the fundamental numeracy needs that they have? And they've actually been backwards mapping and developing some systems in place. Now for our high school, the same thing. The one thing I want you to remember is that we got to get our students motivated and engaged. Finding that purpose of why this assessment is important to them. And one thing that has happened is that they're already, both admins have already started having those conversations with their students as to what is it that needs to happen for iReady? Why is it important to have iReady? I actually shared a couple of PowerPoints with them today on conversational pieces that can be had prior. It actually comes from iReady. Curriculum and Associates, they've already prepared them. They can customize it to show the importance and the value of what this assessment would help them with. And also there's a slide in there that kind of talks to them on why it is for a student to do well on an assessment. Oops, keep hitting the wrong button. Okay. For reading, what you're going to notice is that for those students who were first grade level below, for ninth grade, we had 28%. For 10th grade, we had 26%, 11th, 32%, and 12th grade, 32%. The motivation piece is the one piece that I want to really hone in on, because our 12th graders, though that 62% is also those students that did very well on our SBAC test. So we need to kind of have a conversation with them as to, what was it about this test that they saw different than the SBAC? So that's a good conversation that I know that the administration, Lily and Justin, have already been noticed it and will be having with them. The areas of focus, as well as YOLO, was again, comprehension, literature, and informational text. So those are the areas that they're going to be focusing. And I know that Mr. Pruitt has already put in place where he is having the English teachers supporting history and science in writing, because the writing is different, and to be able to pull that the comprehension of what it is to read informational text. And for math, similarly, the ninth grade, we want yellow and above, we had 21%. We had in ninth grade, 14% in 10th, 12% in 11th, and 10% in 12th. And the area of focus that was determined on this for math was geometry, algebra, and algebraic thinking. And if you notice, there's a trend from 7th grade or 6th grade all the way up. So that is one area of focus, I think, for secondary that we're really going to look in and see what kind of structures we can put in place. Where are those standards that the students really need to hone in? Like I stated, I've been in a lot of PLCs and collaborations with also the partnership that we have with county office where they're helping us to determine that need. So where do we go from here? So we have and will continue with planning and delivering great instruction. We will be evaluating that instruction and modifying what we need. We are finding ways to engage our students, and that is one thing. Students that are here, please go back and talk to your other students, let them know. As well as we're going to alter our instruction based on assessments and data. And we're going to put in place any professional development, any supports our teachers and administrations need so that they can be successful. And then we really look forward, and I'm excited. I know I know you guys are probably dreading it, but I'm excited to see diagnostic 2, to see what trends we have. As we stated, this is only our baseline, but it's a starting point. And we're encouraged to see great things. Questions?
There's 2 pieces of data I want to kind of share, and now that it's public. OHS, I know you saw the district results up there. From 2019 to 2022, OHS was the highest growing high school in the county based on ELA scores. They're number 1. Overall scores from Orr-Stimba High School, they were number 3 in the county, and they just missed being number 2, but we had to go down to the 3rd decimal place of the percentage point. So I'm calling that a tie. I'm saying we're really number 2 there. So, you know, the great instruction's happening at OHS, and math, we're right in the middle. Even though 15% looks like just a number you shake your head at, it is 10 out of 19, I think it is, in the county. So, you know, it's just comparatively, we're right there in the middle with math.
I had a question about looking at the timeline, and I didn't really see where iReady was being used to create classes. And, you know, and so I guess that, which leads me to the next question. You talked about, for example, I think you said math, 4 domains and 40 specifics. Are all of our kids really, or do we have kids that are not fully meeting the green line spread across those 40 points in those 4 different domains, or do we really just have our kids tightly grouped with, you know, particular deficits?
So we're working with the math departments from 7th grade through 12 to build a pathway where we don't put kids into classes based on their born on date, which is really how we've done it, and not on what their readiness might be. And that may be needing to develop a class where the working title of it is a high school mathematics readiness class that just kind of gives you an algebra readiness to go back and hit those areas that you need that you may be lacking in. Still keep them on path for A through G possibilities. We don't want to at freshman year take anybody out of the college spectrum because of one math class. But, you know, the way it pretty much is now, what math 1 is the lowest level we offer at OHS. So if you're not ready for it, you better catch up. And that's not a good educational model. So we're looking at bringing in that. We've had a couple conversations about it. We're going to reach out to the teachers, let them kind of see it. I think that's ongoing right now. Come back with a recommendation, and then we'll bring it to the board. But the idea is that do the same thing at the junior high level. Have a junior high mathematics readiness course for the students who aren't quite ready for pre-algebra. There is new frameworks, and Kim can help me out when they're expected to be released, if we know that yet, that the state's working on. I don't know what they're going to say, but I do know that the first time in history we see a new AP class and it's taken a step back and not going. Usually the APs are trying to get you to go even further. Now they're going to start offering AP pre-calculus, which has never been offered, which I've given this speech 1,000 times. If you stop and think about it, every high school class, every high school program culminates in a college prep class, right? 12th grade language arts is designed to prepare you for your first year of college. The AP 12th grade is designed to replace your first year of college. And that's true in every discipline except math. We replace a class with AP calculus that has 3 prerequisites in college. And AP, our English 101, does not have prerequisites except for being at grade level. Am I right, Mr.? I mean, not taking remedial is it? History 103, US history does not have a prerequisite to it, but the AP version of math has 3 prerequisites before you can take it. And I think the state's starting to, or the nation starting to realize that our scores could be because we're expecting everybody to be so high in the discipline, then we aren't matching with the other disciplines. So we may see a shift in the frameworks a little bit in that regard.
And then the other comment that I had was to the thought about these yellow students or students that are ready to pop right up. Unfortunately, our data showed they popped down. We had a linear progression as students were in our schools longer, where we saw more kids in pink and red. And we saw kids just in general, if you put all these, next to each other, you see a linear progression where the students, more and more of them fall below as they move through. And if our schools are really doing what we want, what we all come here to achieve for these young folks sitting in front of us, we want to see the students that aren't achieving at grade level slide. We want to see more kids at grade level, and we want to move that yellow band up. But so many of the graphs that we looked at tonight showed a very linear and some weird jumps that are worth delving into. Why did you slide from 2nd grade to 5th grade, seeing more and more, and then 6th grade, we jump up and see better performance, but then we see that slide through YOLO and it jumps up at 9th grade. And then we saw a slide accepting the 11th graders last year, a linear slide into lower performance. And so it's concerning.
My caution on that, though, is we've never identified the yellow before iReady. So when we're comparing 3rd graders to 2nd graders on these SBACs, we're comparing different kids. iReady will let us take diagnostic ones, the same group of kids, what happened to the yellow. And that's where we expect to see yellow becoming green. We haven't done that before in this district. This is iReady. So we're gonna look at that. And what iReady also does is it doesn't, as Ms. Robles-Smith point out, it doesn't just say, these are the kids who are underperforming in math. It says, these are the kids who are underperforming in number sense. It's this group of kids, teach them number sense. These are the kids who don't quite get data and measurement, teach them that. These who don't understand geography. I mean, you've been through the training, you see how it breaks it down. So that is why, this is the solution to that slope you've seen. This is us saying, we know this group of students needs this treatment. This group of students might need a different treatment. And that's what the intervention teachers are really focusing on, is that. And one of the things we found quickly was that math fluency wasn't there. As much as, I don't know what to call it anymore, Engage New York, Eureka changes its name, it seems, after every new inception of it. But one of the things it doesn't really focus on is that math fluency piece. And, 4 times 3 shouldn't be 12. 4 times 3 should be 12. And we're now focused on that math fluency, which we think will be a great complement to the curriculum. So the kids don't spend more times doing this, they spend times engaging in the problem.
And that, to me, is a place that we can really use technology. And that leaves a teacher available to sit with this student and go, why are you having trouble with this? Meanwhile, a group of kids are sitting there looking at a gamified thing that gets them through. You blow up the alien when you get 12 quicker than having to do it on your fingers. So that seems like a really great place to improve our system.
Paul, some too, if you look at how children and students grow and how parents react to them. When you get to the end of 4th grade, a lot of parents go, okay, now you can do it. I don't have to be with you. Think of your kindergartner, your 1st and your 2nd grader. You're with them all the time. You hover over them. Then you get to 11th grade and the idea that, oh, I can get a job. I might want a car. I'm dating. I right? You're doing all these other things. Your mind isn't totally on education. It's on other things. We have to be able to meld and show how education will help, and study groups together, working in some of your clubs that you have really help, because you want to feel part of it too. And sometimes you don't want to be the brainiac. And the other part, you looked at Bonita. Bonita is a unique school. It's not because the other schools are not doing the same, but then Bonita only has one of every class, and we only have a teacher for every class. So therefore, you know, if you had this child in first grade, you kind of keep a little look at them in third or in fifth, or they'll come to you. Where if they're at Hunt or Herb Barrington, they're large schools, and not that they don't want to, but sometimes there isn't enough of that person to spread about. So.
Yeah, and I hope that as you guys go back to your problem solving, you really get after what Mrs. Conforti was just saying. If you guys came back to me and said, we're going to split the genders, we're going to have an all-female math and science class for our 6th and 7th graders, I'd think there's good sound data behind why you'd want to do that. Exactly what, you know, the colloquialism that Mrs. Conforti just said, it's not cool to be a brainiac, especially if you're a 6th or 7th or 8th grade girl. You know, all of a sudden it's, you know, she was talking about dating, and maybe nobody wants to date you if you know the right answer in science class. And we certainly don't want that as our culture here at Newman Crosland. I hope that's the culture with you guys. But you know, I hope that we kind of throw out the box and do whatever's good for our kids and not limit ourselves.
I'll just kind of add, one of the things that we're going to do on Wednesday, for example, that I think is kind of important to call out is somebody from SCOE will come and walk with me and Ms. Bencourt and site principals. We're going to go to all of the sites, and we're taking a temperature on math and seeing if we notice patterns and trends. And so we'll hit 2 schools on the 16th, then we'll hit 2 schools on the 29th. And then we're going to sit down as admin. And this isn't to like, don't do anything fancy for us teachers, just do what you do. But it's just to try to get that temperature of like, we're going to all, you know, having SCOE support, myself, Ms. Bettencourt, the principals, and it's just another opportunity to evaluate our systems, to provide feedback, and to create better ones heading into January, especially into the spring. So we do share the wealth across the district, and the admin team works together really well, all 4 sites. So each site's a little unique, but at the same time, there's strengths that we can draw from each one. So that's kind of the positive next step for us before diagnostic too. So.
And we've done the same thing at the high school. We've already had a math walkthrough at OHS, and we had a math walkthrough at YOLO, and the same type of situations were discussed. The one thing that I do want to mention is one thing that came out of is we do have a co-teaching partnership with SCOE too, where we have math teachers working with our special ed teachers and working to see how we can best support them. And the one thing that we did find out is, like Ms. Conforti mentioned, is we need to bring manipulatives to our high schools, you know, so that was one positive thing. And I know that Chandra Brace has been instrumental in ensuring that those teachers are doing that. So those conversations are being had and getting into the nitty gritty. I know that the data is very overwhelming, but I know that there are a lot of good things going on, and I'm very excited to be in my position to be able to see that happening. So thank you.
Thank you very much for everything, really. And I think students, you need to look at what opportunities are around. Sometimes we think of doctors, lawyers, teachers, that there are so many other types of jobs, and we need to start helping you earlier, like in primary grades, to give you ideas of what there is available and what you might have to be studying. And if you wanted to be like I was going to be a secretary at one time, well, you don't need those anymore because everything can be done by computers. So by the time you decide what it is, it may not be there. So widen your range. No,
I just completely disagree with not needing a secretary. I just want Nancy to hear me say that.
You're not a secretary. No, you're an executive assistant. That's a big thing, especially when I need you. Okay, first readings of AR 3517, facilities inspection, electronic signatures, education for foster youth, governing board elections, electronic signatures, district and school websites, and facilities inspections. Again, that's our homework.
I think Mr. Wallace had some comments on those that you wanted to get through the first reading.
Yeah, I did.
Foster youth.
No, it's. Sorry, one of these deals with the new law regarding menstruation products. And we are by rule required to provide menstruation products in middle and high school. My understanding of the current events of menstruation is that it is a weight or mass-based, not an age-based phenomenon. And that probably means that we have girls in 4th and 5th grade who are dealing with menstruating. Probably by the time you're, middle school or at least in high school, you've probably learned to deal with, and you've learned what to pack in your purse and all that kind of stuff, which is probably not going to be as true for a 9 or 10 or 11-year-old 4th or 5th grader. Probably also, much closer to the first time she's experienced this. And so it came back to me that while we have very specific requirements that we not only provide menstruation products in the women's restroom, the girls' restroom, whatever you want to call it, but also in the boys' restroom in case there's a transgender boy. I don't necessarily know that if we chose to go beyond the minimum, but anyway, I thought it was worth looking at. I don't know if that means you.
That would be a board discussion if you want to see me change that, I want to see that policy change for the second read. This would be the opportunity to get the will of the board. So when we put it to the second read.
I can address the elementary issue. We keep those products with the LVNs, health clerks or nurses, and not in the bathroom. So if there's an issue, usually a teacher will support and send them to the health clerk. And that's actually the better way. At least I feel like the principals can nod or that's actually the better way to handle it at an elementary site. So it is available. It's just not available in the restroom.
Okay, very cool. I'm good with that. If that's what we're doing and it's working.
Okay, next is the consent calendar. The consent calendar items are routine in nature and usually do not require board discussion. Individual items may be removed by the board members and presented for discussion in separate action. The consent calendar will be adopted by a roll call vote. Okay.
Mr. Posey, do we need to pull, is it 5141, 5142A?
5142, you need to make a motion to approve the consent calendar with 5142, noting it's 15 minutes, not 30 minutes before the start of school that the teachers are in their classroom.
Okay, do you need that typed, Mrs.? Okay, then I will make that motion.
Okay. And may I have a second for that? I second it. I'll second it. Okay. Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst? Aye. Mr. Snodderly is absent. Mr. Bizarre? And Ms. Conforti votes aye. Okay. Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent calendar
Just did that.
items. We just did that. Oh, sorry, I wrote it in the wrong place and didn't write it. Okay. There we go. Approved resolution number 22-23/07, authorizing the filing for funding under the state school facility program to the Office of Public Education, Construction and State Allocation.
So items 2 and 3 are basically some resolutions that allow my signature in applying for modernization monies and different types of fundings that we just missed when I came on board in July amongst all the resolutions that allowed me to sign for the district. There were these two.
These were the only
When we
two.
went to apply for modernization, they said, well, first you have to do this, and the board has to say it's okay that you sign. But
Okay, may I have someone make a motion for number 2?
I make a motion to approve number 2, resolution 22-2307.
May I-
second it.
Tim.
I haven't heard his voice all night. Well,
There you go.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodley is absent, Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
and Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 401. And resolution 22-2308. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve 22-2308.
And I'll second that too.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly is absent and I vote aye. Okay, 4 is. Yeah, 4, I crossed it out. Approve Oristimba High School change order from Harris Builders in the amount of $59,749.40.
so we almost did it. We almost got through the construction without a change order, minus a couple trees. So Mr. Vargas and I were looking at the blueprints a month ago, and we noticed this little shade of green inside the fence line. I go, Matt, that looks like grass. And he goes, I don't think so. And I'm like, no, it looks like grass. There's 2 of them. And so I don't think so. That'd be silly. And when we called, they had planned to actually put grass inside the fence line next to the pool, where you would have to A, get a lawnmower in to cut it, B, have to keep the grass from getting into the pool, and C, have to put the bleachers on top of the grass instead of concrete.
And water.
So the good news is they credited us $5,000 for not having to put the grass down. The bad news is the decking and the extra drainage was 64,000. So the net difference was 59,700 to not have grass next to a pool.
That makes sense. Okay, may I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodgrass is absent, Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 401 absent. Approve the 2022 California Dashboard Local Indicator. Mrs.
These are just, it's basically our local data that'll be featured on the California dashboard that we complete every year, and then you approve, and it'll be linked to our website also.
Oh, perfect. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Hey, may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye, Mr. Snodderly is absent, and Mr. Bizarre.
Aye.
Approve the 2022 Comprehensive School Safety Plans. Those are their big ones. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 comprehensive school safety plans.
And may I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye, Mr. Snodley is absent, Mr. Bizarre.
Aye.
Okay, passes 4-0. Future agenda items, first interim organizational meeting, because we just had an election. Relationships, student correctiveness to campus, and equity will be on. And Mr. Posey.
Thank you. I'll start by noting you should have some, I call them one pagers amongst you, which cover just the basic data talking points of the presentation you saw tonight.
Right.
If you want to email me any feedback, what you'd like to see change, what you'd like, if they're working for you, if they're not working for you, just to kind of let us know if we're hitting the mark on that. The purpose is kind of prep you for those elevator conversations or those Nob Hill conversations. If someone says, what's the facilities like? Well, you have kind of the talking points in a nutshell. Great production of Addams Family. I don't think we had a board meeting since then. Got to go see that, and it was really fun. Great job for the NCLUSD theater department. It was really an enjoyable evening. She'll kill me for saying this, but my wife is notorious for falling asleep in movies and on TV shows. And she was like, wow, that kept me alert the whole time. Now that's a very high praise. And I mean that way. And Edward, just edit that part out. So if she's watching at home, she can't see that. We had a meeting with teachers. Well, it was about I say about 18 teachers on the grading policy, which was part of my goals this year. Incredible philosophical conversation. Hearing the different teachers talk about their different philosophies. We started with the CSBA's recommended policy as kind of a first read, much like you do. We will definitely go through a second, maybe a third read, because there were, some, well, I want that, but not all situations, or I want that. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the fun of writing policy. And it was a really good conversation. I think everybody grew professionally, having been part of it. So nothing to report out quite yet. We're amending the existing policy to capture the will of the group, and we'll see how we do when we go over it the second time, and probably a third time. Then we'll take it to ASB and let them say what we're missing out of it. The high school ASB students will get their shot at it. I had a very productive meeting with transportation with our first student partners, talking about some timeliness of some routes. I know it's been a frustration with parents. I appreciate your patience on that. The issue really comes into play when we have a driver call out sick. The replacement driver comes from Stockton, and they don't know they're coming here until they get to work in Stockton. So they have to drive the bus from Stockton. Causes, especially the Bonita route, to be a little tardy. We also straightened up some student discipline procedures. Did a little bit of training with them about what we need so we can effectively handle safety issues on the buses, which I know have been occurring. I will say that they have a few more drivers coming online once the CHP officers get to them to test them. They expect the next couple of weeks they should be staffed enough where we don't have to rely on Stockton fill-ins. So better days are ahead. I know this has been a long process, but there's a statewide shortage in bus drivers. I'll say that you have a flyer that's your coat drive. You should find that. Really proud of Mrs. Cassidy and all of the team she's working with, all of our partners out there, the city and the Center for Human Services in doing this. I want to thank Mrs. Madikin from the high school, our Interact president. She showed up at Rotary Thursday and gave us a nice update on what the NAMI and the Interact Club. She included NAMI, she did, and they have a blood drive coming up tomorrow, Wednesday. I thought she said Tuesday, Wednesday. I guess you sold out, or yeah, and they're looking for another phlebotomist. So if you know anybody, want to draw blood. I do have. I did call I'm getting asked a lot about board elections, so I just want to say this in a public statement. I did call the elections office for Stanislaus County. They will be updating the websites Tuesdays and Thursdays, end of business day. And when I said, so like 5 o'clock, they said, probably safer at midnight. And they weren't too far off from that last time. I think it was like 6 o'clock when they got it last time. I checked back in with them today, and during this meeting, I actually got a press release update that they do expect to take the full 30 days to certify the election. And they expect to be adding votes up until the last moment. The issue is going to come with the curing of the ballots, which is a process where if your signature doesn't match or you forgot to sign the ballot, you have so many days to come back and verify that it's your ballot. I asked if tomorrow's update would be the last one. She laughed at me and said, no, will not be the last one. There'll be several major updates before we get to the ones which will be a couple votes here and there. So I keep getting, well, do we know yet? We don't know yet. And we won't know till probably closer to December 7th is when we'll know we'll have the answer. And the final item I have is I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And I hope you all have time to spend with your families and enjoy each other. It's one of my favorite holidays because I like to eat. And my kids come home. And I'm not going to tell you which order I like, but that's the two things I like about it.
Mrs. Hurst?
Okay, I want to say that I went to opening night for the Evans family, and I agree with superintendent. And I must say that I am totally impressed with our students and the level that I see every year. It just keeps getting better. I am so happy that we got the chief. That was great. Kudos to all the maintenance staff. Thank you for all you do. And it's great to see all of you students here. So happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Bizarre?
Well, I wanted to make a comment to the students that are here. You just watched this presentation on how we're doing academically. And I think the messages we're doing about like everybody else in the state, but you may wonder, I mean, when most of you are going to probably be applying for college, you probably already have. Now somebody's going to say, sure, you can come. And you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to stack up? I came from Morris Stimba. Is something else in LA or San Francisco so much better? Am I going to have a tough time when I get there? I can only tell you my kids' experience has been, but I had a guy, my youngest graduated last year. He's up at Chico State. He reports to me that the classes at Chico State are, he thinks, easier than the senior classes that he had at Morris Stimba. He's doing okay. You know, you're going to get what you put into it. You're going to have to study. But I'm just trying to urge you not to feel nervous about going up against some other high school kids from some other place. You're going to do fine. The education you're receiving here is pretty much the education everybody else receives. And again, if you just apply yourself, you'll do all right. So that's my message to you based on, you know, my youngest son, but I had a bunch of other kids and they did fine too.
Fine. Mr. Wallace?
I've been out on the campaign trail and talking to an awful lot of folks. There's a great deal of concern in our community about CRT and what's being taught in social studies. So that's something that we probably need to stay visible and transparent on what's going on. And then to the kids that are here, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate spending the evening with you guys.
Also, have a really good Thanksgiving, but we just and are still going through an election process. When you can and when you're able to, please exercise that right that you have. That's what makes us have our freedoms one way or the other. I loved the Addams family. I am so proud. Now you have a zero, it's zero, like you haven't lost any football games. And keep it up. I think, you know, I'm not really good at football, but keep it up. And thank you very much for making Newman what it is. Our teachers work really hard, but they could stand on their heads. If you don't use it, it doesn't show up, and it's showing up. People know Newman in the Bay Area. I know some people that are in there and they're saying, hey, you guys are doing really good. How come? And it's because of you and our staff that really cares about you. So it's a family. And if you need any of us, we're here. And now everybody that needs to be signed has to come up to us. Okay. So I now call this meeting at 8:43. Take sign. 7:43. Sorry. Oh.